Anyone making a public comment, state their name and city of residence. You will then have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, and we will notify you when your 3 minutes are up. If you experience technical difficulties and are unable to provide public comment during this meeting, please email your comment to Jody Lacrosse at jlacosse@pctpa.net. Because this meeting is being conducted via teleconference, all votes will be roll call votes. Board members, we ask that you state your name prior to making a motion or seconding a motion for the record. Once an item has been moved and seconded, I will request the clerk to call the roll to vote. Thank you, and please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chair, we're similar to last meeting, we're having technical difficulties. The audio is not working on the Zoom feed. So Jeremy, if you could maybe do what you did at the last meeting again. Deanne, can you hear us?
Yeah, this is Deanne. I can hear you now. I could hear you this meeting.
And do we have member joiner with us?
We had a phone number remotely at the outset and has now disappeared.
Okay,
Yeah, he was reporting that there is, he was not hearing anything either. So
can we notify him that we appear to have corrected that?
yes,
Yeah, there was a lag time before we could hear anything on the meeting. So maybe he was just premature, and should be working if he logs back in, hopefully.
Okay. Well, we will give him a moment to join us before we take the roll call. And you said he was visible via just a dial-in number.
I texted him and asking him to log back in.
Okay.
Yeah, when we were in the lobby, there was a 916 phone number also logged in.
Okay.
Yeah, that is Paul.
Thank you, Deanne.
Yeah.
All
We
right.
now have him. So if he's muted currently.
Okay.
So maybe if the administrator could help unmute the 916 phone number. Momentarily unmuted. It's muted again.
Can you go back on the
There it is. A member joiner, are you with us on the call?
I am.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Paul. All right, with that, could we please get a roll call?
Broadway,
Here.
Howdeshelt,
Here.
Joyner,
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next item is item C, and that is AB 361 remote teleconferencing. And Mike Lucan is going to present that item.
yes, the proposed resolution 22-08 would allow us to extend our ability to use remote teleconferencing for the next 30 days. Staff had asked, or the board had asked us to bring this back for potential consideration of going in either direction, yet affirmatively or going back to full in person with the old procedure. Given the upturn in COVID cases, staff brought this back so the board can go in either direction.
So
Great. Are there any questions from the board?
Well, I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to say with the uncertainty of the future, I would make a motion.
Outer Shell seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Haudashelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Our next item is item D, approval of the action minutes from our March 23rd, 2022 meeting.
Move approval. Outer moves approval.
I'm filling in for Jim.
Yeah, understood. Member Joyner, would you be willing to give us a second on that motion?
Yes, second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the March 23rd minutes. Any further discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Haudashelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes.
Wonderful. Our next item is agenda review. Are there any agenda items that need to be modified? Nothing?
Staff does not recommend any changes to the agenda.
Anything from the board?
No.
No. Member Joyner?
No.
Nope. All right. Thank you. We will then move to public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items not on our agenda today. Is there anyone from the public? We have no one from the public here in chambers with us today. Is there anyone from the public online who wishes to comment on an item not on our agenda today? We have no one online either, so we will move then to our next item, which is item G, and that is the consent calendar. Is there anything on the consent calendar the board would wish to pull from the consent calendar? Member Joyner?
Nothing.
Okay, good. Therefore, is there any comments from the public? There being no one in chambers, anyone online who wishes to pull an item from the consent calendar today? No? All right, I'll bring it back to the board. for a motion.
Moves approval of the consent.
We have a
Joyner
motion.
second.
Great, thank you, Paul. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call vote?
Broadway,
Yes.
Haudashelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Our next item is a public hearing for the South Placer Regional Transportation and Air Quality Mitigation Fee Program inflationary adjustment. I will open our public hearing. And Mike Lucan, I believe you're presenting that item.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The item before you today is an item that we bring forward to you on an annual basis to consider inflationary adjustments to our transportation air quality mitigation fee programs, essentially the tier 1 and tier 2 programs under SPRTA. The recommended action today after holding the public hearing would be to adopt resolution 2209, adopting the inflationary adjustment for South Placer. The inflationary adjustment this time is very high, and we're seeing that same level in other fees in some of our member agencies. But the CCI as the construction cost index, which is the factor that we use for that at this time, is 11.98098%, which is the factor that we have agreed for longstanding to use for both our tier 1 and tier 2 programs. Staff recommends that we use that adjustment, as it's one of the few ways that we can adjust fees to basically compensate for the cost of projects. So our cost of projects are increasing, and that is the method that we use to adjust those projects at this time. So that concludes, staff's presentation. As you can see on the charts on the screen, the 11.998%. And if you could go back one slide, historically, that has been our inflation adjustments, which have been in the low digits, but this time, as is the case with most items these days, is trending in the upward direction. that concludes staff's recommendation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer that.
Any questions from the board? I'll start here at the dais.
Yeah, actually. So I understand we're in a steep inflationary period. But when you look at those historically, right, or not, we may, 6 months from now, we may not be in the same situation. So is there a phasing in of this that can be done? Do we have to take, do we have to do 11.98% now? And then we go back to 3.2?
The current MOU allows us to do the inflationary adjustment or not. It doesn't really give us an ability to adjust that. It goes by that. And again, unfortunately, our costs are actually going up higher than that. And so, and with the tier 2 program in particular, the tier 1 program, we can go back and adjust periodically the cost of projects. But tier 2 is the only way that we can adjust that fee is with this inflationary index. So, so staff would again, we could certainly go back and look at phasing it in, but it doesn't seem to be allowable under the current memorandum of agreement between our agencies. And unfortunately, staff thinks is justified at this point in time. Hopefully,
Is there a bottle of water in the house? Bottle of water, please come to the Board of Supervisors chamber.
hopefully over time, hopefully over time, that will decrease. So.
Member Joyner, do you have any questions for staff?
No questions.
Just quickly, Mike, in relationship to BIA, any of those associations, did we have communication with them? Did we receive any feedback?
Yeah, we did reach out to the BIA, the Northern California BIA, and they did not have any objection to this increase in fees. Essentially, thank you very much. Essentially, we're seeing this in all of our member jurisdictions. Placer County, for example, saw a very high increase in their fees when they recently adopted some of their fee programs as well.
Great. And we will, again, look to adjust based on the status of the economy as we approach.
You adjust annually, correct?
We adjust, yes, this is an annual adjustment.
New to this.
Yeah.
I'm not too ignorant, but based on the cost of everything, especially with transportation.
Yeah, unfortunately, our costs are going through the roof on all of our projects, and so unfortunately, at this time, 12% is necessary to keep pace with those cost increases on our projects. Again, hopefully, things will level off or go down in the near future. So,
Great. All right. Thank you. There being no additional questions from the board, I'll open it up for public comment. Again, as I mentioned before, we have no one present here in chambers with us today. Do we have anyone online who wishes to speak? Okay, wonderful. We have an individual who wishes to speak. And is that Jody? Or do we have?
Mr. Garabedian, you're free to speak.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you. Mike Garabedian, Placer County, tomorrow. I wonder if we could have a brief explanation. I was just flipping through the materials, trying to figure out what tier 1 and tier 2 are and who pays and what the funding is for, in the context that the member questions indicate the same kind of concern I'm raising about the costs. Thank you.
Mr. Garabedian, is there anything else or just that question regarding the tier 1 and tier 2?
The general concern I think we all have. So yeah, it's really to try to understand exactly what the fees are for and who pays.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. And I will ask, is there anyone else who wishes to comment? Okay, there being none, staff, would you care to respond to Mr. Garabedian's question?
sure. My apologies for not explaining those two programs earlier. Tier 1 is part of the original adoption of the SPRTA program, and it covers many different transportation projects are in and around the county.
What's that?
It funds essentially things like Sierra College Boulevard in its entirety. It funds the Highway 65 widening project. It funds the Highway 65 interchange project. It funds the Rockland Road interchange project. All told about 10 or 15 different projects in and around the county. I don't have the list in front of me for that, but many, many projects. Now, Tier 2 has two projects in it. Tier 2 has the largest one being Placer Parkway. That is the sole method that we have at this time to fund Placer Parkway. And then there's a very, very small portion in Tier 2 that would fund the Highway 65 Interstate 80 interchange.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. There being no further public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing and we'll bring it back to the board for deliberation and a decision. Is there any further comments or questions from the board?
No, move approval of resolution 22-09, adopting the inflationary adjustment for the South Placer Regional Transportation Air Quality Mitigation Fee.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comment? There being none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Haudashelt,
Yes.
Joyner. Jones. Yes.
Do we have Joyner unmuted?
All right. Yes.
Right. Thank you.
You hear me?
Member Joyner, yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. We will now move to item I, the fiscal year 2021-22 administrative budget amendment number 2. And again, Mike is going to present that item.
Thank you. Yes, this simply is a for the current fiscal year, a request to amend the SPRTA budget essentially to accommodate the overall work program. There was a very small increase of $21,155, which is the cumulative result of minor changes in the budget, including staff time and staff changes for all of the projects contained in SPRTA.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. Is there any questions from the board regarding item I? None from the dais. Member Joyner, any questions regarding item I?
I have none.
I will open it up to the public for comment. We have no one in the room. Do we have anyone online? Okay.
We do. Mr. Garabedian, you're free to talk.
Yeah, Mike Garabedian, Placer County Tomorrow. Expressed our concerns about the various work program projects and our opposition to a number of them at the earlier meeting today at PCTPA, and that also affect the last item on the budget too. So it's really have to go in a new direction with our transportation expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. Anyone else online who wishes to make a comment from the public? All right, I will then bring it back to the board for a motion.
Mr. Lucan, I don't see a resolution. Do we just need not a resolution, it's just a motion?
Just a motion is fine.
So move approval of budget amendment 2 for the administration of the South Placer Regional Transportation Authority.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Haudashelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones. Yes. Motion passes.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next item is item K, the State Route 49 Sidewalk Gap Closure Project. And again, Mike Lucan will be presenting that item.
I think it's item J.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Yeah,
J.
yeah. So,
Is- Oh, I'm sorry. I am
And-
sorry. I did.
and I may
I
have-
saw the two a minute. I skipped
Yeah.
that. Item J, which also will be presented by Mike Lucan. We had the two budget amendments. I took them both together. I'm just trying to speed this up.
No.
But let's go back to item J, and that is
Well,
the
Mr. Chairman, I
2022,
just want to make
23.
sure my motion was properly, I properly made the motion on the FY 21-22 budget amendment. And
Yes.
now we can go to item J on the
Item J.
22-23.
You did, and it was item I. I just skipped item J. I actually renamed item K. So,
And then, as outlined by Director Haudashelt, yes, this now before you is the 22-23. So next year's budget for SPRTA. This item results in a 142,171 decrease from the prior budget, mainly resulting from the completion of the traffic modeling nexus analysis and the staff time associated with that. So staff recommends adoption of the budget with that decrease.
and again, that you said decrease. Is it a decrease or an increase, Mike?
Decrease.
Decrease. Okay. And
So
what
it's
is,
going from this year is 385.27.
you clearly member fill out. Stair
Sorry, are you two taking off?
All right, wonderful. We enjoyed that, actually. All right,
So transportation sounds in the back.
yes, exactly. So with that, I will bring it back to the board. Any questions on the budget 2023, 22, 23 administrative budget? No?
No questions.
Member Joyner?
I'm trying, man. No questions.
All right, wonderful. I'll open it up for public comment. Do we have anyone online who wishes to comment? Wonderful.
Mr. Garabedian, you're free to speak.
Hi, Mike Carabedian, Placer County Tomorrow. So the budget really needs to encompass bringing in our best thinkers of the age on solving transportation problems like we have. That really have to take a fresh look at this, and like the last two items, be extremely cautious about the taxpayers being asked to fund a limited approach to increasing highway capacity that cannot possibly relieve the congestion we have and that's coming. Really have to be more responsible in what we're using staff for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbean. All right, any other comments from the public? All right, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Let me read it so I get it right. I will make a motion that we approve the FY 22-23 budget for the administration of the South Placer Regional Transportation.
Haudashelt seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call, vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Haudashelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones. Motion passes.
Wonderful. And after a brief delay, we will actually move to item K. And the State Route 49 sidewalk gap closure project. And Mike Lucan again is presenting that item.
Thank you. Similar to the item we had on the PCTPA agenda, this item is to allow SPRTA to essentially acquire and hold right away for the sidewalk gap closure project. If we could go to the next slide. So the requested action here is a little bit different. This would be to actually add the project to the SPRTA transportation improvement list, but really for the sole purpose of acquiring right away. It is not a project in the South County, and therefore would not be part of the fee programs or any other activities, but really would be done because SPRTA is empowered to as a JPA to acquire and to hold right away until such time that we transfer that to in this case Caltrans. And so we're essentially using SPRTA as that conduit to do that. So we would be adding that. We would have to add that to the project list. And then we would have to, second recommended action is to adopt CEQA or findings for CEQA that this project is exempt from CEQA. And then lastly, to establish the right-of-way administrative process, which is essentially to delegate to the executive director that acquisition and utility relocation process and to execute agreements associated with that. Next slide. So again, just a background, we are trying to construct a sidewalk and curb ramp program along Highway 49 between I-80 and Dry Creek Road. This closes gaps in the existing pedestrian network beyond the Highway 49 rehab project, which was recently completed by Caltrans. So this would be to close that gap so you'd have continuous sidewalks on one or the other sides of Highway 49 to give pedestrians a chance to utilize a safe route to where they're going, including the schools along the area. About 3/4 of this project is in the unincorporated county, and 1/4 of the project is in the city of Auburn. Next slide. So again, why we're doing it this way is because PCTPA is the responsible agency that works with Caltrans to implement the process. But it does not have those powers as it was originally created by the state of California. So we're requesting that SPRTA that we utilize SPRTA for that purpose. One of our member agencies is the county, which allows us to legally to utilize this process of having SPRTA being this intermediary, if you will, to acquire and hold right away. And so that's why we're recommending that at this time. If we could go to the next slide. In order to do this, to make this all legal, we need to have an MOU between SPRTA and PCTPA that spells out this delegation, if you will, of SPRTA's power to do that. And then lastly, in order to be able to work on that, because of the enabling legislation or the enabling MOU that created SPRTA, we have to add this to the project list. So we're not adding it to the tier 1 or tier 2 fee programs. We're simply adding it to a project list so that it would be able to be used as a right-of-way conduit. They would not receive any SPRTA funding, and in fact, any costs associated with this project would be borne by PCTPA. Next slide. We have to, this is an action, a potential action under CEQA, so we have to consider the California Environmental Quality Act when we do this. Again, Caltrans is the CEQA lead agency. We are a responsible agency in this regards, and so we also need to adopt that notice of exemption on the project and make those same findings as Caltrans did. Next slide. And here on the slide outlines the exact findings that need to be made. Essentially, this is an exempt project. It is something that is going to promote walking and utilizing non-vehicular means and would qualify for an exemption under CEQA. Next slide. What's entailed in this project, we have about 48 affected parcels. Only 5 of them have partial acquisitions, small slivers of property that we need for this project. Most of these are temporary construction easements where we need to go through the property to actually construct it. And so there's about 43 of those that are needed. Because this project is on a tight time frame because of the grant associated with this project, we are asking that you delegate to the executive director the ability to essentially implement this program, to sign any actions or other implementing factors to acquire these properties. Next slide. So again, the recommendation is to add the project to the list of projects for SPRTA, to adopt that the project is exempt from CEQA, and direct staff to file a notice of exemption, and to establish that right-of-way process, delegating those duties to implement the project to the executive director. With that, I'll conclude my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, can we go 5 slides back? I'm just guessing it's 5 slides. There was, go right there. Sparta. Okay, there was a distinction between, it's being added to the list, but it's not being added to the fee. So
Correct.
that's just one. Thank you.
Okay.
No
Any-
questions.
no questions?
No questions.
Member Joyner, any questions?
No, no questions.
Okay, we'll open it up. We'll open it up to the public. I think we have one. There's no one in the chambers. We'll open it up to the public online. Is there anyone online who wishes to comment on this item? No one. Okay. I will bring it back. One last question before we move this forward. And either Deanne or Mike, we have 3 separate resolutions. Can we take those together or do we need to take them separate? Deanne is graciously shaking her head yes, and so we'll take those together. Thank you, Deanne. I appreciate you confirming that. All right, so we'll bring it back to the board for any deliberation or a motion.
I'll make the motion to adopt resolution 22-10 to add the State Route 49 sidewalk gap closure project to the list of
Sparta's transportation improvements and direct the chair to execute a memorandum of understanding between South Placer Regional Transportation Authority and Placer County Transportation Agency authorizing Sparta to acquire rights of way for the State Route 49 sidewalk gap closure project and requiring PCTPA reimburse Sparta for all Sparta costs. And so I will also move that we adopt resolution 22-11, finding State Route 49 sidewalk gap closure project exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and direct the filing of a notice of exemption. And I will move that we adopt resolution 22-12, establishing an administrative process for rights of way acquisition and delegating various authorities to the executive director for the acquisition of rights of way and utility relocations for the State Route 49 sidewalk gap closure project.
Thank you.
How to show seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Broadway,
Yes.
Haudashelt,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Jones.
yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next item on our agenda today is the executive director's report.
The only one thing I wanted to mention is that we continue to work with most of our member jurisdictions along with the development community on the fee deferral program process for the tier 2 fee deferral. We've had a series of meetings to date with those. And thanks especially to the BIA for organizing, getting the development community into 2 large meetings that we had. We are continuing to do that in outreach and meet with members of the development community, and is our hope next month to propose to them or to submit to them a draft proposal for a phase out of that program. So we're not recommending at this time, that the program end immediately, but a phase out, and we'll be working with them to come up hopefully with something that's mutually agreeable to phase the deferral out over time, mainly because it is affecting the ability to finance actual construction of those projects. So just wanted to give you a quick update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on our interaction to this point.
Okay. Any questions for the executive director? No. Member Joyner, looks like we may have lost Member Joyner. Okay. Any board direction to staff? Nope. Thank you. We appreciate it. And we do have informational items that are in our packet, the attack meetings and the Sparta financials. And with that, our next regularly scheduled Sparta meeting will take place on June 22nd. Everyone have a wonderful Memorial Day and a wonderful holiday weekend, which is coming up. Do you have something else?
At this time, it's probably fairly likely that we will cancel the June meeting for lack of items. So
Okay.
that may change, but at this point, that's kind of the direction we're in.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that update as well. And with that, we are adjourned.